Welcome to day 2 of our Hay Crisis special. We're talking to 3 different equestrians over 3 days to try and find out how they and their horses are coping with the UK's hay shortage after the driest spring recorded in 100 years. Don't forget to go back and listen to yesterday's episode with the British Horse Society, who share expert tips, help and advice. And also don't forget to comment your experiences below. We'd love to hear from you. Today we talk to a horse owner who has to take her 3 horses out hand-grazing in the dark just to try and get enough forage. It's Katarina Marcus, living in Brighton in Sussex. Kat, welcome to Curious Equestrian.
Hello, Anna Louise.
And Kat, before we get into the hay shortage crisis, just talk us through your horses, your herd and your setup so we can imagine you and picture your scenario.
Okay, so I am what we call at my yard extreme DIY. It means that I rent a field off the local farmer. I am completely responsible for my 3. I have 3 at the moment. I had 4 until the beginning of the year, until we lost one. So I'm completely responsible for everything. There is no assistance. I am completely self-sufficient, which is a different angle, I think, for most people who are looking at hay prices at the moment. I'm quite lucky in as much as our farmer produces his own hay, but obviously he needs to feed his herds first as well. So we are suffering just as much as everybody else.
Oh, it's such a difficult time at the moment. Kat, just tell us how you're being affected currently in the hay shortage crisis across the UK.
It is extremely expensive all of a sudden. I think we had a fairly good run of the same prices for quite a long time, at least where I am. I'm in Brighton. We've not really had a hay price rise for a good few years, actually. Maybe within like 50p or a pound up and down, depending. But this is the first time in about 10 or 12 years where it's suddenly doubled. And I think it's going to go up even more. I could see it happening because I am part of a working farm. I could see that the grass wasn't growing. I could see that we were only having one haying. And I already started developing a contingency plan in my head about July time.
Really?
Yes, because I could see I've been there before, and I could just see. I don't think it was as bad last time, but it is. I could see that it would be dire.
Gosh, you had that insight
Yeah.
way before, certainly I saw it coming and equestrian communities around me saw it coming and the Facebook forums started roaring with conversations and discussions. What did you start to anticipate, Kat, in the summer and what did you sort of start thinking?
So I have the luxury of being able to section off a part of my field for winter grazing, which I always do. This year I did it earlier. So I've basically started hand grazing mine on the down. I'm at the foot of the South Downs. Again, very lucky for me. So I can take mine and literally hand graze them for half an hour each a day. That's one of the beauties of where I am. Obviously, other people can't do that. So I sectioned off my winter grazing much earlier than normal. And I have to say I was very, very relieved when the rains did come in the end, because actually it hasn't mattered much that I did it earlier than normal since there was no rain and it wasn't growing anyway.
No.
So there was a big sigh of relief for me when finally the rains came. I think the entire equestrian community across the country breathed that sigh of relief. I've started feeding more hard feed already. So normally I wouldn't be upping the feed until about the end of October, beginning November. So I've reduced what they get in hay and I've upped their hard feed. I also think I'm quite lucky in as much as, because they are out 24/7 all year round, even if the grass is very short on their field and there isn't much to nibble at, there is always something somewhere. And I think that it affects me very differently from people who have their horses stabled.
Certainly, yes. There's always something on the hedgerows, isn't there? Or a leaf, a
Yes,
fallen leaf they can snap up. That's what ours do as well. When the grass starts, like you say, getting so short, something blows in, from the neighbouring
there's
woodland.
something, or they
Yeah.
start eating. I put in a hedgerow about 15 years ago, or they start eating the bark. It's not
Yes.
great from a hedgerow, but they have been doing that. The other thing is, I query the wisdom that horses have to eat 24/7, because I grew up next to a wild herd and they
Ah.
didn't have food 24/7, but they still didn't have the amount of ulcers that we attribute to not being able to feed all the time. I think there is a correlation between being stabled and not having access to nibbles, rather than not having access to nibbles when you're still moving around. I think
Yes.
there's a stress correlation as well, where if they're in the stable and they can't eat, they get stressed because they don't know where the next meal is coming from. Whereas
That's
when they're out,
interesting.
and even if there's nothing out there, it feels different, and they're still moving around. They're still they can work through their stress response better when they're out when they're out. So I'm
Well, and quite
worried.
interesting you mention that, because if we do think about wild herds, there would have been periods of their day where they would be journeying through, sandy
Absolutely, yeah,
terrain where there isn't any grass, or boggy, swampy areas, or mud, to go and search for food. So I'm
yeah.
sure, I mean, I don't know, I don't have the research or the stats or the science behind it, but I'm sure there's some truth in what you're saying there, Kat, in that.
I don't have the research or the stats either.
No,
It's
but it's
just
an
a gut
interesting
feeling, and
thought.
from what
Yeah.
I've observed in my lifetime, I've
Mm.
worked a lot with wild horses, and it's different. It is definitely they cope with periods of no food very differently.
And so this is
Um,
helping you and your herd currently, because they can sort of
big,
nibble, they can move around, living out
yeah,
24/7 rather than being in
yeah.
stables. Kat, talk us through, how much of a price increase are you seeing with your hay? What are you paying? How much were you paying?
So we were paying £5.50 for a small bale. That's recently gone up to £7.50. I haven't bought any small bales in the last couple of weeks. I think it might have gone up again. Um, we had the big 5 foot round bales they were very cheap in the first place. From as far as I'm concerned, they were £35 in the summer, and they've gone up to 50. I think the next load is going to be 60 a bale, because we're now at the point where our farmer also has to make sure that his cows are fed and his sheep are fed. Actually, it's a female farmer.
That's always good to hear. You don't want to jump
Yeah,
to the thought
she
that
needs to
farmers are
make sure
male.
that the cows are fed, and she needs to make sure that her sheep are fed. And I get that. They are very wonderful. They're protecting their liveries, in as much as they also do. They have a delivery service out and about, and they've said that they'll make sure that there's enough hay for their herd first, then us. If there is anything left over, they will carry on delivering, but they're looking after us first, which I am very grateful for.
And we're seeing that community, aren't we? I certainly am with my hay supplier as well, in that people, if you've shown loyalty to your hay supplier, they're saying, we will
Yeah.
prioritise you in this hay crisis. We will make sure you have hay. And anyone that's been jumping around trying to compare prices and shown that disloyalty, actually, we won't serve them and they'll have to go elsewhere. So if you've been part of a regular hay delivery service, it seems that actually you are part of that community. I do feel for people that have never had a regular hay delivery service and have had to move around, because they won't have that relationship with one supplier.
Well, yes, I feel for those people. I'm also very, very worried about livery yards having to close, because I used to be a freelance trainer and instructor. I've been around many different yards in that capacity. And when you have a package where you're including hay and straw, yes, you can suddenly increase your livery cost, and try and get your liveries to pay for the increased cost of bedding and hay and so on. But I fear that there's quite a few livery yard owners who will find that off the back of this, they are going to lose business. They are going to find, I hate to mention it, but bad payment is a thing in equestrian communities. That people are starting to drag their feet where payment is concerned, etc., because people don't have the money. It's not, it's nobody's fault.
And Kat,
I'm worried about the effect this is going to have.
Talking of that, such an important point you make. You've seen your hay in some cases nearly doubling and huge price increases. You say it's going up again. But you're not getting promotions at work in line with this rise in feed costs. So how are you finding the money and how are you making your hay stretch?
As I said, I'm lucky enough to be able to hand-graze mine on the foot of the South Downs. That's part of it. So I'm going to give them more hard feed, but not in the portions that they're having. We have a little thing going on in my yard where we feed little and often, and we use the fact that everybody comes at a different time. So we're kind of, so that they can have little portions throughout the day fed by various people.
Oh, brilliant. So you're clubbing together on the yard.
Yes. So we're because it's not just about whether you have enough food. It's also about because as most people will know, if you give a horse a whole big feed in one go, apart from it being a colic risk, they can't actually digest it. It will be pooped out the other end. You need to feed horses in small portions as often as possible if you want to keep the weight on, or if you want to put more weight on. So we're starting to use the fact that we come in at different times to give smaller feeds more often.
Oh, well, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So and I imagine it's been a lifeline having a team around you.
I have to say, I'm really, really good. I often play with the thought of, I want my own land. I want to be self-sufficient, all of these things. And then when it comes to times like this, I really count my blessings that I'm not on my own somewhere, that there are other owners around and that we can help each other out.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear, because often you hear with livery yards, you hear about the politics, the gossip, the negatives, the interference, the squabbling over grazing or, whatever might be going on the yard. Here is a wonderful story of everyone coming together, collaborating, teaming up to actually make things easier. Kat, I've got to ask you, how on earth do you fit hand grazing into your daily regime when you work full time on top of everything else?
It is very tricky, I have to say. I get up. So what it means is I get up a couple of hours before I would normally to do the horses now. Or I will. Actually, that's a lie. I will be getting up a couple of hours early. I am now getting up an hour earlier than I would have. So it becomes more and more as the as the winter goes on. At the moment, we're still kind of okay, but I can see it happening that it won't be the case. What it does mean is I can't go away and see my family over Christmas, for example, because I can't ask somebody else to go and hand graze my ponies over Christmas, which I will be doing.
Yeah.
And I'm going away for October half term for 5 days, and I'm already slightly panicking about no hand grazing happening there. So it becomes, over the winter, over this winter, I will stop riding and I will start just focusing on making sure they're okay.
Wow. And I was going to ask you, what impact has this hay crisis, this hay shortage had on what you're doing with your horses? You're having to give up riding.
Yes, but to be honest, I don't find that such a hardship. Riding in winter is a bit pants anyway, because we don't have a school where I am with we don't have a floodlit school. We have a small school, but it's not floodlit. It is mostly hacking, and the reality is that I'll be on the downs when it's dark one end of the day, and when it's dark the other end of the day, and I can do hand grazing during that darkness with my little head torch. But I wouldn't be able to ride in it anyway, so it's just I'm still spending time with them. It's just a different time,
Oh my goodness. Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. It's more of a bonding groundwork sort of time.
Yeah.
And hard work, like you say, head torches in the bleak of the darkness, in those really dimly lit evenings that actually, that's a horrible thought, isn't it? Having to trek out in with only a torch with your horse on the downs as well, where I imagine that can get a bit spooky, a bit, does it feel dangerous?
No.
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 She's made a tough step up out here.
No, actually, it genuinely doesn't. I feel I enjoy that part, unless it is absolutely hammering it down. I enjoy that part as well. It's a different. They trust me to provide for them, and that trust then does translate later on into the riding as well. If you have that kind of, I don't want to say bond is a different thing, but that kind of relationship with your herd, then it goes both ways. You look after them, they look after you. I'd completely
100%.
trust genuinely, I completely trust if I was out on the downs when I am out on the downs with them, if somebody came along who was not kosher, I'm pretty sure they would put themselves between me and the non-kosher person. Well, two of them would. One maybe not so much.
Oh. It's fascinating, isn't it? The different behaviours and personalities and who you think would actually step up in that moment and who you think wouldn't.
It doesn't matter, because the one that wouldn't is laminitic anyway, so she can't have that much hand grazing in the first place. No, I'm just kidding, but I feel very safe when I'm with them.
But you've just highlighted another issue, that with laminitics, you can't take hand grazing, and actually I've got 2 laminitics and they are on soaked hay. They can't have anything else. We've tried them on various haylages, low sugar haylages. It doesn't suit them. They can't go out on the grass at all. They're chronically laminitic. So they are reliant on soaked hay nets throughout the day. And we are finding ourselves having to, ration the hay down and put it in tiny hold nets to try and savour every bit that doesn't fall down and get trampled on in the mud in their paddock that's laminitic friendly, that's just a mud and dirt base. And it's an absolute nightmare thinking, oh my gosh, that panic of, will we have access to enough hay throughout the next 6 months?
I don't know what the situation is with the straw this year so much, but have you ever tried barley or oat straw?
No, I haven't tried straw.
Yeah, have a look into that. Are they small or large equines? What have you got? What size have you got?
An American miniature and a Shetland cross New Forest.
Yeah, but the Shetland cross New Forest would be fine. The American miniature, I wouldn't feed any straw to, because their digestive tract is so small. You might end up with an impaction. But the New Forest cross Shetland, you can feed that one anything at all.
Together, sadly, so he has to muddle along with the little problem character that's the American miniature. Bless his heart, if there's a problem, it's always the American miniature.
Yeah, I can imagine. They're fragile things.
Very, very fragile and sensitive, although his personality isn't. He's very, such a character and so full of it. He doesn't know that he's the sensitive one.
So that is one of my tricks with my laminate. But she is out. Again, she's out 24/7, but she's muzzled, even in the winter. She lives in her muzzle. She's fine with that. I'm sure there will be people screaming in the comments section if you at me that shouldn't happen. She's lived very happily in her muzzle for the last 8 years.
Wow!
Actually,
can I ask, as a fellow, laminitic owner, we've got muzzles, but our grass is so short like that they can't eat the grass through their muzzle. And we were told by the vets that you can only put them on grass if it's long grass that they can bite off. Is that true?
Yes.
You find that?
Yes and no. So we have two. We have mine, and there's another one on the yard. Very similar, the two of them. The other one also very, very laminitic. She did absolutely kill her front teeth by trying to graze on very, very short grass through a muzzle. Um, Breeze, mine, she's been in the muzzle, like I said, it's longer than 8 years now. Time flies when you're having fun. She is 18 now, and she's been in it since she was 8. That's 10 years. There you go. So, and her front teeth are perfect. I don't know.
Wow.
They and the same muzzle. They were both. It's nothing to do with make or anything like that. They were both on the same muzzles.
It's just individuals.
My dentist. Yeah, my horse dentist says it's to do with how aggressively they try and get at the grass, and Breeze just doesn't push down very hard on her teeth.
I see. Yeah, I see. So again, always comes back down, doesn't it, to the individual horse and how they cope and how they get on with it. And Kat, I've got to ask you, because you mentioned earlier about the difficulties of managing hay shortages, and this isn't your first hay shortage. Just take us back to actually what you had to do in terms of a career change to get through the last time you were part of a hay shortage.
Well, the last time I was part of a hay shortage, that's when I stopped being a freelance instructor and trainer, because what happened was that very, very quickly people had no more money for frippery like instructors and trainers. So my clientele were very much people who were also either had their own setup or were on DIY like me, who were trying to work with problem horses, or not always problem horses. Had a new horse, didn't quite know how to work with that horse, brought me in. Often kept me for quite a long time. And I was doing really well. Then the hay shortage happened, and additionally a winter when it didn't stop raining. So we had, I don't know whether anyone else remembers this, the last time this happened, it was like this. We had no hay, slightly more than this time, but also no hay. And then off the back of the hay shortage, it started raining around about October, like mid-October, and it would not stop until March. It was just mud. Everything was completely bogged down. It was awful. And I very swiftly, as a freelancer, lost 90% of my clients. I kept 2, which are still with me, but kind of on and off from time to time. And I couldn't. And at the same time, I was staring down the barrel of the hay gun. So I had to very quickly find a job that would definitely pay. And I switched from being what I was to working in an SEN school for, and it stuck because I got very, very used to having a definite, regular paycheck. And I'm also very good at it.
Which always helps.
Brief conversation earlier, you and I, about the fact that training problem horses and working with SEN children have many similarities.
Which is eye-opening to hear, Kat, for, as someone who's working with both daily, to hear that comparison is fascinating. And how did you find leaving behind your equestrian work and taking on work in a school? Was it a big shift in life management as well, having a herd of 4 horses at that time? I mean, how did you cope
absolutely
with your horse care in terms of taking on a full-time job around a reasonably flexible job?
It was hard. I still really miss it. I really, really miss being in the equestrian business. But I'm also not the youngest person any longer, so maybe I don't bounce as well any longer as I did at the time. So there are other perks to it. But going from being relatively flexible to having a full-time job was really tough. it helps that the farm, my house, and the school are within a 3-mile radius, so I don't have travel time, and that helps a lot. I also partially incorporate my ponies into what I do at the school now.
Wow.
So that's so it's not completely split between this is my work and this is the ponies. But yeah, it was tough. It was a really, really big adjustment, especially around riding, actually, because when I could do my days, or I could program my days when I was still working in the equestrian business in a way that would leave me some time with my own as well.
Mm.
On the plus side, there was also a lot of the time after I'd ridden clients' horses, I was maybe not that keen to go home and ride my own afterwards. So it has positives and negatives in both directions. I just, but when it's the summer and it's been a nice summer, then I still go, I wish I was still doing that.
I can absolutely imagine.
Yeah.
And hearing you
It
talk,
changed
Kat,
my
as
life.
well, it makes me think of all those who will be facing that this year, who will actually be thinking, I need to change careers, I need to get a full-time job, I need to juggle 2 or 3 jobs just to afford the hay. And your hay has increased rapidly. I mean, how will you cope with the increase, in financial costs as well with the hay? The fact that the deliveries are a hell of a lot more expensive than you were paying, and yet you're doing the same job.
I haven't figured it out yet, Anna Louise. I really haven't. At the moment I'm still coasting on the end of the summer and the fact that I am hand grazing and that there is some daylight. I did the thing that you shouldn't do. I did bulk buy 2 Bigfoot 5-foot round bales because that's the storage I had. And I'm already like eking them out. Like I've got one that is still wrapped. I'm not telling anybody where I am. It might disappear. No,
Well, it
but
gets like that, doesn't it? You don't want to talk too much about it, especially you on a shared yard. You might
yeah.
notice that actually people are sort of siphoning off hay. You don't know how bad it's
You
going
know
to get,
what?
do you?
You know what? We had in years past, we had crews like that, but right now, the people we are very, very lucky. Right now, the crew we have on that yard is we would ask for each other to help out, maybe, but
Oh,
nobody would just siphon off.
brilliant.
And yeah, no, I trust the people I'm on a yard with at the moment. That is actually a huge relief as well, because you're right. We've had other phases while I've been there with other people.
You're very much dependent on who's on the yard at the time,
Yeah,
aren't you? And who's keeping their
yeah.
horses with you. And Kat, talk us through. You lost one of your horses to colic earlier this year, and I'm so sorry to
Mm.
hear that. That must have been such an awful and depressing time, and certainly very distressing as well. But it must worry you going into winter this year with less grazing, less access to hay. Are you fearful for the winter ahead?
I am a little bit, but probably differently from what you're thinking. I am fearful, but it's actually the number 3 that I'm fearful of, because
Ah.
they 3 is a terrible number. I've been there before, uh, and it's not a good number to sustain. 2 is good, 4 is good. 5 is good, but 3 is not a great number. There is always one out in the cold, literally in the winter.
I'm with you. I've got
Um,
3. It's a constant juggle, making
oh
sure everyone's got access to everyone. If one has
yeah,
to come in or 2 have to come in because of illnesses or
yes,
injuries, it's a nightmare, isn't it? And
yes.
me
Three,
and my mum have talked about that juggle of 3.
3 is awful, and I was actually looking for a 4th one again. The other thing that happens is they start fighting. The 2 girls. I normally keep 2 geldings and 2 girls. That's my setup. It was the little Shetland gelding that left us, and teary.
Oh, it's so hard.
Yeah,
It
it's too
never gets
evil.
easier, does it? People say
No, it
time is a
doesn't.
healer, But it
Yeah,
isn't.
it
It
isn't.
really isn't.
So he died on the 13th of January, and I've been kind of looking all summer, but if Shetlands are incredibly expensive at the moment. I have no idea why, and I don't have more grades. I don't have more space for anything that is bigger than 10 hands. It has to be something between 9 and maybe 10 to maximum. And I haven't got, like most people, I haven't got a huge budget. I have a budget, but not a huge one. That's actually, you asked me about how I'm coping with the hay. My Shetland budget is diminishing at a rate of knots already. So we've decided to stop looking because we have money set aside for Shetland that is now becoming hay money. But part of me is still worried about that because they're fighting so much over the food, and add into it the jealousy of, that happens when you've got three. It's the girls have started they like each other normally, but they started getting quite aggressive with each other. And that worries me the most because my oldie is, while she can still give quite well, she is old, and she's a grass sickness survivor. So she's always quite skinny anyway. And it just worries me. That dynamic is not good. And then that dynamic with not enough hay is terrible.
And isn't it interesting that actually it's all these details that we don't think about when we're facing the hay crisis? We have the immediate worry and the immediate panic about the financial increase and where that money's going to come from and what we're going to do with our hay supply to make it last longer. But then we're hearing this, Kat, we're hearing changes of careers, we're hearing taking on extra jobs, we're hearing you going out on your own hand grazing with a head torch in the pitch black to try and find grass elsewhere and to increase those grazing hours for your horses. And then actually a decision you were going to make to ease the herd dynamic and bring a fourth member in and ease that situation is not possible because your budget is now going on the hay, and it's actually having a big impact on your herd.
It is. It's absolutely, yeah. The impact is huge, and I like you said, I worry about all the freelancers who all also have animals. I also something that nobody's addressed so far, as far as I haven't, obviously I don't know what you've talked about with other guests yet, but something that we need to think about is it's not just that the price is going up. At one point, we will run out. There has been so little hay produced this year. We will run out. There is no question about it. And the last time that happened, without wanting to get political, we were bringing in hay from France. That's not going to happen. For two reasons. Firstly, because we're probably not importing from France. And secondly, because they've had the same issues on the continent.
They have. I've also been hearing that America have had the same issue as well, unbelievably. I was talking to various people across the pond who are saying it's not just England, it's not just the UK. No. It's happening worldwide because of climate change. I mean, what will you do, Kat? You mentioned it's going to run out, this supply. What will you do? What will we all do when we hit those? It's going to be in the hardest part of the year as well, in those winter months.
And we'll all be hand grazing with our head torches on. Find yourself a local graveyard. I'm not kidding. You will have. I fear the most for the people who are in urbanized areas. I'm, like I said earlier, I'm quite lucky. I'm on the foot of the South Downs. There is quite a lot of grass around me that I can go to. I worry for the people who don't have that kind of access. Where the horses are stabled 23 hours out of a normal day already, and where they will be stabled 24 hours a day, which is,
and for those
that still happen. That is.
for those laminitics that can't have any grass at all, like my chronic laminitics that are on soaked hay, I have the fear of death in me in the moment. The thought of us running out, I think, well, they can't be hand grazed. They immediately go down with laminitis. So it is a terrifying prospect. And the horses we can hand graze, fantastic. But like you mentioned, the horses that are stabled as well and don't have access to 24/7 grazing, or the owner doesn't have time to take them out hand grazing, and how it so impacts, as you mentioned, our work life. People swapping from freelance to, a contracted job, people having to take on extra jobs. How are equestrians going to cope that are struggling financially?
I don't know, but I see a lot of very cheap horses on the market in the near future. That's my answer to I think that there will be a moment where people will start selling their horses, and that is just really sad.
Kat, thank you so much for coming on Curious Equestrian and for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.